Have you ever told yourself, "I'm just not ready yet"? It sounds responsible, like wisdom, like you're protecting your peace. But look closer. How many versions of your life have you already delayed under that same excuse? You're not calm. You're restless. You feel it in your chest, that tightness when you think about finally starting. Your thoughts race at night. You stare at the ceiling with a to-do list echoing like a siren, and still, you wait. You say you're being cautious. But what you're really doing is hiding, behind strategy, behind overthinking, behind another morning where you just didn't feel aligned. Let me tell you something no one else will. Readiness is a lie. You're not waiting for the right moment. You're waiting for fear to leave, and it won't, because it's not supposed to. Your nervous system is doing exactly what Lisa Feldman Barrett described, avoiding energy-costly states, choosing hesitation as survival. But that survival is killing your momentum. Every time you don't act, your brain rewards you with relief. Good thing I didn't do it. That's the loop. And B.F. Skinner proved it. Avoidance becomes addiction the second it feels like safety. You've tricked yourself into believing this is self-care, that taking more time means you're being gentle. But what if it's not gentleness? What if it's just fear wearing softer clothes? You say you're protecting your peace, but what you're really protecting is your paralysis. And here's the brutal truth. Every time you say not yet, you're shaping yourself into someone who never does. You're betraying your potential, one justified delay at a time. Nietzsche called it a passive nihilism, a quiet, polished way to waste your own life. You're not lazy, you're not broken, but you are trapped. Not by failure, by almost, by maybe tomorrow, by soon. And if you're honest, you already know that moment of readiness isn't coming. It never was. Clarity doesn't come from stillness. It comes from engagement, from action, from the kind of movement that makes your hands shake and your heart race and your identity scream. Because that's how transformation begins. Not with peace, but with disruption. And that's where we're going. In this video, I'm not going to give you motivation. I'm going to give you the system that's been sabotaging you. And by the end, you'll know exactly how to break it. You've been waiting for a sign, for permission, for something to shift. This is it. This is the shift. But only if you move. You told yourself it was wisdom, that giving it more time was mature, that waiting until you were more prepared was the responsible thing to do. And for a while, it felt noble, like you were protecting something fragile inside you. But here's what's really happening. You're calling fear maturity. You're calling avoidance clarity. You're calling paralysis peace. And deep down, you know it. That weight you feel in your chest when the opportunity passes you by, that dull ache in your stomach when someone else does what you said you would, that tension behind your eyes when you say, "I'm just being careful" for the 100th time, that's not alignment. That's self-betrayal. Rehearsed so many times it started sounding like self-respect. You didn't choose patience. Your nervous system did. Because it remembers. It remembers the failure that humiliated you. It remembers the rejection that shook you. It remembers the shame you never processed. And now, it's protecting you by keeping you small, with elegant excuses. Gabor Maté said it best. Avoidance is not about confusion. It's about pain. Unprocessed pain writes invisible rules. Don't go there again. Don't try that again. It's safer to wait. But time doesn't heal what you avoid. It just hides it deeper. And in the meantime, you become excellent at sounding grounded, when in reality, you're stuck. You meditate, reflect, analyze, hoping clarity will arrive before you do anything that might hurt. But clarity doesn't come in stillness. It comes in movement. What you call patience is often just fear that learned how to speak softly. And here's the brutal part. You've mastered how to say nothing is wrong, while everything stays the same. It's not that you don't want to grow. It's that you're afraid the next version of you will break what this one is still trying to protect. But the only way to become is to confront. You don't need more time. You need to call your fear by its real name. Because once you do, it starts losing its power. And that brings us to a deeper illusion. The idea that readiness is something that arrives on its own. It doesn't. It never did. Let's talk about it. You've been waiting to feel something. A shift. A moment. That internal click that tells you, now's the time. But it never comes. And the longer you wait, the more you start to wonder if maybe something's wrong with you. Why doesn't it feel like it's supposed to? Why doesn't confidence arrive before action? Why do you always seem to hesitate at the edge of the life you want? Let me say something clearly. There is no moment of readiness, not the way you imagine it. What you're waiting for, that perfect emotional alignment, that sense of certainty, is a fantasy built by fear. Because fear knows how to be patient too. It whispers, "You'll know when it's right," but all it's doing is keeping you in place. Here's the brutal truth. Readiness is not an arrival. It's a side effect. It's the thing that comes after the leap, not before it. You don't feel ready and then act. You act, and then feel ready. Brené Brown said, "Courage doesn't come from certainty. It emerges through vulnerability." You've been sold the idea that confidence is a prerequisite. It's not. It's a consequence. Confidence isn't a sign you're safe. It's proof that you moved anyway and survived. But here's what's really happening. You've internalized the lie that fear must be gone before you begin. So every time it shows up, you pull back. You see fear and assume it means not yet. But fear isn't a stop sign. It's a threshold. It's the price of evolution. And underneath your hesitation is something tender. A small voice that still believes you need to be perfect before you begin. That starting messy would somehow discredit your worth. That others will notice your uncertainty and label it failure. But that's not how this works. The truth is, everyone you admire once felt just as unready. They just stopped waiting for the feeling to change. You think you're stuck because you lack motivation, but you're stuck because you're still waiting for the storm inside to settle before you move. And it won't. Because the storm isn't something to outwait, it's something to move with. You don't calm the fear and then act. You act, and your nervous system learns, "I can survive this." That's what changes you. That's what rewires the belief. You don't need to feel certain. You need to feel honest. Honest enough to admit that readiness was never coming, because it was never the point. And this leads us to the real trap. Your brain is rewarding you for hesitating. That false relief you feel every time you delay, it's not harmless. It's turning into your addiction. So if readiness doesn't come before action, why does waiting feel so good? Why does putting something off feel like a breath of relief, even when you know it's keeping you stuck? Here's why. Your brain is rewarding your hesitation. And once you understand how that works, you'll see that your procrastination isn't random. It's wired. It's not a failure of discipline. It's a cycle of relief disguised as self-protection. Let's go deeper. Every time you consider doing something hard, applying, calling, showing up, committing, your body tenses. There's resistance. Your nervous system flags the situation as risky. But the moment you don't do it, the moment you say, "Not now," you feel better. Not because the problem is solved, but because the pressure is gone. That drop in tension, that hit of relief, that's the trap. And it's exactly how operant conditioning works. A model developed by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner. He discovered that behaviors followed by a sense of relief, even temporary, become more likely to repeat. This is called negative reinforcement, and it's how habits form. In your case, the behavior is avoidance. The relief becomes the reward. And over time, the brain learns. Avoidance equals safety. Discomfort equals threat. So even though you consciously want to grow, your subconscious is now hooked on the relief of doing nothing. And here's the brutal part. Every time you delay action, you're reinforcing the belief that you're not capable of handling discomfort. You're teaching your brain to fear your own growth. And the more that cycle repeats, the more familiar it becomes. You stop noticing it. It just feels like this isn't the right time. But that's not truth. That's programming. And if you don't interrupt it, that cycle turns into a personality. The kind that's always waiting, always planning, always almost ready. This is why motivation fades so quickly. Because when the reward loop is tied to relief, not action, you'll always default to what's easiest, even if it hurts long-term. So what do? You disrupt the cycle, not by thinking, by acting, but in a very specific way. One that creates just enough discomfort to challenge the loop without overwhelming your system. You train your brain to associate movement with safety. You flip the reward. You make action feel better than delay. Because when that shift happens, everything changes. But before we talk about rewiring, we need to address another dangerous lie. That clarity and confidence come from waiting. They don't. In fact, neuroscience tells us the opposite. You've been taught to wait for clarity, to sit still, think it through. Weigh every outcome until things feel certain. But here's what's really happening. You're mistaking stillness for wisdom when it's actually just a freeze response. You're sitting in the waiting room of your own life, hoping clarity will knock. But clarity doesn't knock. It doesn't arrive. You build it by moving. Let's break this down. Your brain wasn't designed to make decisions in isolation. It was built for interaction, for engagement, for stimulus, response, adjustment, flow. The part of your brain responsible for clarity, the prefrontal cortex, doesn't fully activate when you're frozen in indecision. It performs at its best when you're doing, trying, adjusting. In other words, you don't think your way into a new identity. You act your way into one. And that's why waiting feels stuck. Because it is. Neurochemically, energetically, existentially. You think you're being careful, when in reality, you're interrupting the very system designed to give you direction, your movement feedback loop. You learn in motion. You grow in motion. You become in motion. And yet, the world praises the illusion of taking your time. But for most people, time doesn't create clarity. It creates noise. The longer you wait, the louder the doubt becomes. Your brain starts looping. Your vision fogs. And instead of clarity, you get exhaustion. This is why overthinking always feels productive, but rarely is. It burns fuel, not forward. Nietzsche said, "Faith must be forged in movement, not found in rest." That line matters, because what you're craving isn't more time. It's faith that you'll be okay once you start. And that faith isn't gifted. It's earned, step by step, mistake by mistake, truth by revealed truth. The clarity you're desperate for lives on the other side of motion. Not perfect motion, not graceful motion. Just willingness to move before you feel ready. That's the pivot. You don't wait for certainty to act. You act to create certainty. And the faster you break that old sequence, thought, wait, stall, the sooner you build a new one. Thought, act, adjust, grow. That's how momentum replaces confusion. But we've made waiting look noble. We've wrapped hesitation in the language of healing. And that brings us to the next illusion, self-care. Because while true healing is real and necessary, what most people call self-care is just the newest disguise for emotional procrastination. And you need to see it for what it is, before it cements into your identity. Let's talk about the trap of comfort. You've probably said it. I'm honoring my pace. I just need space to heal. I'm focusing on self-care right now. And maybe you meant it. But let's be honest. Was that the truth? Or a beautifully wrapped delay? Because what we're calling healing today is often just fear in a softer voice. We've learned how to dress avoidance in velvet. We made emotional procrastination look like wisdom. And now we're stuck in it, feeling validated but not fulfilled. You don't need to reject rest. You need to know when rest has become a disguise. Here's what's really happening. The modern self-care movement, for all its good intentions, has been hijacked by the culture of comfort. It tells you that anything uncomfortable is toxic, that pushing yourself is trauma response, that discomfort means you're not aligned. But growth has always been uncomfortable. Healing has always required friction. Transformation has always asked for parts of you to burn. Yet now, the moment something stretches us, we retreat. We say, "This doesn't feel good, so it must not be right." That's not self-awareness. That's conditioning. It's your brain, still addicted to relief, whispering, "Let's call this healing and get back in bed." And you believe it, because it's wrapped in spiritual language, because it sounds gentle, because it gives you permission to wait just a little longer. But if we're being honest, how long have you been healing? How many cycles of stillness do you need before you realize you're not healing anymore? You're hiding. You've traded intensity for numbness, depth for stillness, power for passivity. Real self-care doesn't keep you in place. It nourishes you so you can move. It strengthens you to return to the fire, not avoid it forever. But that's not what sells. Comfort sells, and that's what you've been buying. Let's be clear. There is no transformation without discomfort. None. You don't become resilient by avoiding pressure. You don't become aligned by avoiding risk. You don't find purpose by staying inside the most emotionally padded version of yourself. This doesn't mean push through burnout. It means stop confusing fear with intuition. Stop calling paralysis self-compassion. Stop waiting for healing to finish before you begin your life again. Because healing doesn't finish. It integrates through motion, through choices, through showing up while still tender. And this leads us to the deepest lie of all, that time, by itself, will prepare you, that waiting longer makes you wiser. It doesn't. It makes you colder. It turns hesitation into habit. And we're about to confront that, because time isn't as neutral as you think. You've been told that time heals, that if you wait long enough, you'll grow. That maturity is something that just happens. But here's what's really happening. Time isn't neutral. It doesn't shape you passively. It shapes you actively, through repetition. And when you spend that time avoiding discomfort, avoiding decisions, avoiding movement, you're not preparing. You're reinforcing. Every day you delay action, you're rehearsing a pattern. Every moment you choose safety over progress, you're deepening the groove in your nervous system. Not just emotionally, biologically. That's what makes this dangerous. We romanticize taking time as if it's inherently wise. But time doesn't equal wisdom. Time equals momentum in whatever direction you're facing. And if that direction is inward collapse masked as contemplation, then time becomes your accomplice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You act like you'll live forever, but you die every day." Let that hit. Because you're not waiting in a vacuum. You're waiting inside your life. And your life doesn't pause while you stall. It keeps moving, without you. The version of you that delays, overthinks, self-soothes, instead of self-commits. That version gets stronger the longer it's fed. Not smarter, not braver, just more familiar. And that's the trap. We assume we'll naturally evolve with time. But in reality, time only magnifies what we repeat. It's not preparing you for your next chapter. It's engraving your current one deeper into your identity. That's why you can feel older, but not wiser. More informed, but no more free. Because nothing changes without exposure, without stretch, without controlled discomfort. And growth, real, irreversible growth, isn't a product of age. It's a byproduct of movement through resistance. You become more capable by choosing action when comfort begs you not to. You mature by facing what you'd rather avoid, again and again, until fear loses its grip. That's what makes transformation possible. And this is where the self-help world has failed you. It taught you that time is part of the process. But if you're not disrupting the pattern, time becomes the process of staying the same. So the question isn't, are you healing? It's, are you repeating? You don't need another 6 months. You don't need to turn 30 or 40 or wait for a sign from the universe. You need to stop using time as a shield, because nothing's coming to save you. And the longer you wait, the more the wait becomes who you are. Which leads us to the moment of truth. You say you're ready to change, but are your patterns secretly keeping you stuck? Let's decode that. Now, you say you're ready to change, but your patterns say otherwise. You speak about growth, but your behavior speaks about fear. This is where the deception gets subtle and dangerous, because by now you've read the books, you've journaled, meditated, reflected. You know the language of transformation so well, it feels like progress. But here's what's really happening. You've replaced action with identity. You feel like someone evolving, but you're still circling the same internal block. And your brain, as we've seen, loves that loop. Because every time you study instead of act, you're rewarded with the illusion of effort without risk. And it feels real, but it isn't. Let's decode the signs you're still waiting, without realizing it. Sign 1. You're always preparing. You keep reading more, planning more, refining your goals, but nothing gets built. The real work, the uncomfortable, imperfect first step, never begins. You're addicted to potential, not progress. Sign 2. You need to feel aligned before acting. You wait for a perfect internal state, for your energy to feel right. But alignment isn't a feeling, it's a direction. It gets built, not waited for. Sign 3. You overthink beginnings. You want the launch, the plan, the vision to be flawless before taking the first step. You underestimate momentum. You think it starts with clarity, but clarity starts with motion. Sign 4. You call fear by other names. You say you're being intentional or introspective. You say you're refining your standards. But underneath those polished words is hesitation, fear of failing publicly, fear of being seen trying, fear of becoming someone who does instead of someone who prepares. And that last one matters most, because once you shift from preparation to execution, your identity is on the line. You can't hide in the almost anymore. You can't protect the fantasy of who you could be. Now you're showing who you are, and that's terrifying. So you keep circling. You stay near the edge of change, just close enough to feel like you're doing something, but never close enough to actually jump. And here's the brutal truth. You can spend your entire life as a person who almost changed, who almost started, who almost became. That's what self-sabotage really looks like. Not chaos, but quiet delay, polished hesitation, dressed up in spiritual, intellectual, or emotional language. But it's still delay, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. So the next time you feel almost ready, ask yourself, what part of me is still waiting to be perfect before I move? Because that's the voice keeping you small. But the good news is, it's just a voice, and you can choose not to listen. Now, let's rebuild the system, from the inside out. It starts with a method, 3 steps, 1 shift. Let's break the trap. You've seen the patterns. You've named the disguises. And maybe for the first time in a long time, you're not just aware, you're awake. But here's the question that matters now. What do you do with it? Because insight without movement turns into weight. You feel everything, but shift nothing. And that's not what we're here for. This is the moment it turns. Not with hype, not with surface-level motivation, but with something real, simple, human, a method rooted in neuroscience, a shift that rewires the trap, not just recognizes it. And it starts with this. Step 1, name the avoidance. Get brutally honest. Not poetic, not spiritual, honest. What are you actually afraid will happen if you move forward? Not the polished version, the raw one. I'll look like a failure. They'll see I'm not enough. If I start, I'll have to keep going, and I'm not sure I can. You can't heal what you won't face. And when fear stays unnamed, it stays powerful. So write it, speak it, own it, shine light on the shadow, and watch it shrink. Step 2, create controlled exposure. This is where everything changes. You're not going to leap off a cliff. You're going to build a bridge, brick by brick. Each action, small enough to feel possible, big enough to stretch you. Send the message. Apply to one opportunity. Record the first video. Say what you actually mean. Let the discomfort come. Let your hands shake. Let your voice tremble. Because this time, you know what it is. Not danger, but data. Every time you act while afraid, your brain learns something new. We survived. That wasn't so bad. And it rewires. That's not a metaphor. That's biology. And finally, step 3, reinforce action emotionally. This is the part people skip, but it's everything. Your brain needs reward to replace the old loop of relief through avoidance. So celebrate, not the outcome, the movement. Feel proud when you act, not later, now. Anchor it in your nervous system. This is what progress feels like. That's how momentum is built, not in breakthroughs, but in repetition. Emotion plus motion, transformation. This isn't about changing everything at once. It's about becoming someone who moves anyway, someone who doesn't wait for permission, who doesn't confuse fear with intuition, who doesn't stay stuck in a loop that was never theirs to begin with, someone who chooses availability over certainty, who understands that clarity isn't granted, it's earned, in motion, in exposure, in rewiring. You don't need to be ready, you need to be willing. And if you're still here, you are. You've waited long enough. Let's build something real. And if this unlocked something in you, you're not alone. But for now, move, start, breathe, rewire. You're home. So here we are. Not at the end of a video, but at the edge of something deeper. Not a motivational speech, not a temporary high, but a truth you already felt before you pressed play. This wasn't just content, it was a mirror. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you actually saw yourself in it. Not the version of you that pretends everything's fine, not the curated identity you perform in front of others, but the one that knows you've been waiting, hesitating, holding back, not because you're lazy or broken, but because no one ever told you the real cost of staying still. That waiting has a weight. That hesitation becomes identity. That your life doesn't pause just because you do. But now, you know. You've seen how fear disguises itself as patience. You've seen how avoidance is rewarded. You've seen how the feeling of readiness is a myth your brain uses to protect you. And most importantly, you've seen how to break it. You know the loop. You know the method. You know that movement rewires more than motivation ever could. So the real question now isn't what else do you need? It's what are you still waiting for? Because here's the truth. This video won't change your life, but what you do after this might. Maybe it's that message you haven't sent, that commitment you've avoided, that dream you keep quietly fantasizing about, but never actually pursue. This is your interruption, not because everything is suddenly easy, but because now you can't unknow this. You can't pretend you don't recognize the trap. You can't unsee how you've been rehearsing hesitation and calling it growth. And that's a gift, because awareness is the beginning. But willingness, that's what creates everything else. So if this hit you, if you felt even one sentence in your chest, don't let this end here. Let it echo. Let it move you. And when it does, come back. Because this is just one chapter of a much deeper journey we're walking together. The next video will take you even further, into the hidden layers of identity, the subconscious architecture of why we stay small, and how to take your mind back from the patterns that no longer serve you. If you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment to fix that, not for vanity metrics, but because you need a space that won't let you forget what you're capable of. Drop a comment. Tell me, what are you finally done waiting for? Speak it into reality. Claim it. And until the next one, don't wait. Just start, even if it's small, even if your hands shake, because you don't need to feel ready to begin. You just need to be done with the wait.